yesterday, I posted the video of a woman, Ms. Gomez, who gave an interview in which she said that she ran into the school in Uvalde when the cops weren't doing anything, and was going, classroom to classroom to find her kids, to hope to save her kids. It's an interview which I think is going to get memory hold. It's an interview which, hold on, let me get that out of here. It's an interview which I think is going to get memory hold. It's an interview which one cannot vouch for the accuracy of the substance of the interview, but you can sort of presume that this woman is speaking from her own memory and her own experience of the most traumatic experience conceivable. And she will probably get some facts wrong, some chronological timeline wrong. But above and beyond that, it's people need answers, and people need to look into this, and not when Biden says, I'm going to defer, I defer to the response of the police. I respect them entirely, won't question them, unless I want to defund them because they're systematically targeting minorities, in which case I want to defund them. I want to prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. But in this case, totally trust them, move on. There's nothing more to see here. And this is the one and only problem out of this entire catastrophe. And don't look anywhere else. Tatum had his take on it, where I think his take, Officer Tatum, I think his analysis was, it read, or it sounded like one that was arguing from a conclusion, which was his own conclusion, and not towards it. And so I went and watched it, and I said, maybe I'm going to real-time respond or react, not in like the exploitive sense, real-time respond to the substance of his critique, which was a real-time analysis of Ms. Gomez recounting of events. But before we get there in a second, hold on. They should have asked, are you outraged by the coalition? Are you not outraged by the coalition? Are you somewhat clueless to what's really going on and therefore okay with it? Probably would have gotten a different answer there. Question, Mrs. Brown, were you comfortable with the decision to board the Titanic's lifeboat? Answer, I was somewhat comfortable. Yeah. Tatum defends cops at all costs, not kids. See, that's why I won't get into the outright, blanket writing off Tatum. He raises he raises legitimate points, like timeline doesn't necessarily match. She was far away from the incidents, but let's do this together in real time. I won't go over all of it because I actually would rather hear Tatum's. I'll respond to where I think Tatum is looking over or glossing over certain elements. Let me just minimize here and let's just see what we got here.
Ladies and gentlemen and ladies, I want to let this Uvalde thing go, but it's very difficult for me to let this thing.
Okay, so he's gonna talk about. Let's just see where her statement is here.
In there, and I'm telling you right now, I don't see none of y'all in there. Y'all are standing with snipers and y'all are far away. If y'all don't go in there, I'm going in there. Brett immediately put me in cuffs.
She says,
now, let me say this before I get too deep in this video. I'm not blaming this woman for anything that she says she's doing or did or wanted to do. Any parent would have.
And now I'm going to interrupt Tatum. No, this is inception of commentary, but listen to what he says.
Any parent. Now, I don't know if they would have acted the way she acted, but they would have felt the way that she would have felt. I would have felt the same way she would have felt. So I'm not here to criticize nothing that she did or didn't do. I'm here to break down the timeline so we can put things in perspective. She said she was arrested. Now, U.S. Marshals came out and made an official statement and said they never arrested a single person. They didn't.
And so here, she says she was arrested. A lot of citizens will confuse arrestation, being arrested, with being detained. And we've heard multiple accounts of parents who were temporarily detained would be the right word. We heard stories of parents that were tased who wanted to go in. So this is where semantically Tatum is probably right, but on the substance, we know that the cops were detaining people, preventing them from going in for good or for right or for wrong reasons. But this is it's a semantic debate, which I think ignores the actual substance of what Ms. Gomez was had attested to in her interview.
didn't put anybody in handcuffs. Now, somebody lying, they both can't be right.
No, they both can be right. They could have been detained, or she could have been told to stay somewhere, which she took to be a form of detainment or being arrested. I would presume it was not being arrested, but detained, which to a layperson can be, people use those terms synonymously. Arrested means stopped. Detainment is a non-custodial arrest, literally. So semantics, and I think it ignores the bulk of the issue here.
After Uvalde police officers told marshals to uncuff Gomez, she ran towards the school.
As soon as they...
And by the way, and here Tatum is also going to mix in his distrust with the MSM, because this is CBS. I don't trust CBS any further than I can throw them. And so, true. But then going back to the Reuters fact check, MSM can still be right sometimes. But but in this case, they're reporting on testimony from a parent, which in some meaningful extent runs contrary to the narrative of what the politicians want to turn this event into for the political purpose.
Cuffed me, I jumped that first gate fence, and once I jumped it, I went to my son's class, and I knocked on the door, and I remember the teacher saying, I'm like, hey, they're already bolt cutting the fence to get me. She's like, you think we have time to get out? I said, y'all have time. I'm gonna run for my other son.
So she went into the school, knocked on the door, and had a conversation with a teacher. So that should lead you to believe that they're nowhere near the shooting.
Again, these are suppositions. I mean, it's a big scene. There's more than one. There was one area of the incident itself, and maybe this woman was not near the actual classroom where the individual barricaded them in and was left for however long. This would be a fair cross-examination of the story to get out the inaccuracies. The substance of what is going on here is that this woman is saying that the cops, I believe she says the cops waited for 75 minutes outside. If anybody wants to raise the argument, they didn't know if this was a hostage situation or whatever, and okay, fine. Then those are the questions you're going to want to ask to determine whether or not the delay was outright negligence or had some plausible justification. But I think Tatum is missing the tree, missing the trees in the forest, or missing the forest by looking only at the trees.
They're nowhere near where the action is happening at. And I'm gonna show you a layout of the school so you can have a better visual.
Okay, well, we can skip that, but let's just go here.
So she said nobody was in there, but yet when she was going to the classroom to get her other kid, cops were trying to stop her. So are they in there? Are they not in there?
This is not a sophistry type analysis. The woman is testifying that the cops were preventing parents from going in, were not going in, left them there for extended periods of time. And that's what should be outraging about this.
More the whole class, they could have done something, gone through the window, sniped them through the window. I mean, something, but nothing was being done. If anything, they were being more aggressive on us parents that were willing to go in there. And like I told one of the officers, I don't need you to protect me. Get away from me. I don't need your protection. If anything, I need you to go in there with me to go protect my kids. And
as people that know about any of these scenes, she's probably fighting with people on the perimeter. U.S. Marshals are on the perimeter.
And again, what does it change in the substance of this? I want to get to the part where they mentioned that the cops, and I think we now know, as a matter of fact, it was either 45 minutes to 90 minutes. And most people I think the consensus is 75 minutes. 75 minutes where they were holding back parents while what was going on the most atrocious, horrendous thing you can possibly imagine. So you could dissect this woman's story all you want. Maybe she was in the wrong building. Maybe she was in another building. Maybe she was behind the perimeter. The reality is 45 to 90 minutes, the police, we've seen the videos, did not do anything. For whatever the reason, they held back the parents. They held back parents who came. One came from the barber and borrowed, the shotgun of the barber. So you could dissect this woman's story, and it's certainly, it might not be She might not have been in the building right next door to the class, but she was there. She's saying what the police were doing to the parents, what they weren't doing in terms of intervening in an urgent situation, and not just not intervening for 4 to 7, 10 minutes, 45 minutes to 90 minutes when that is going on. I would be not dissecting this woman's account. I would be dissecting what the police did not do, because people need answers. And if there's liability in the response, people need to be held accountable.
Cops, she said, I don't need you to protect me. They're out there on a perimeter. These are not the officers that are in the action zone. They're not.
If anything, they were being more aggressive on us. They were more pertained on keeping us back than getting into that school.
Les pères qui veulent perdre du poids font tous.
And now you're seeing a French
c'est
ad
celle de
targeted.
penser que le poids.
The they that she's talking about are people on the perimeter.
Okay, we got the perimeter point. Let's just go to what this reporter is saying here.
Keeps sharing her story that she might face some kind of violation for obstruction of justice. So
Now, with all of this being said, which I think that's probably not true, could be,
her energy.
clearly than where she was.
But it's the frustration of the parents trying to get in is something that's understandable, and of course law enforcement can't just let all the parents go in when there's a shooter inside, clearly. But her energy, just her frustration is what's reverberating across this community at this point. And she also told me that she's on probation for some charges from about a decade ago, and that she received a call from someone in law enforcement telling her that if she keeps talking to media, or if she keeps sharing her story, that she might face some kind of violation for obstruction of justice. So
We can stop it there. So we know enough of the facts now that to go ahead and dissect this woman's story and nitpick where she might have gotten things technically wrong, semantically wrong. This is one of those situations where it's not the minutia of the testimony of what she's saying. It's the broader situation that she's describing, which seems to be undeniable right now, seems to be recognized and acknowledged. And whether or not what this reporter said is true as to her being on probation for something that happened a decade ago, and whether or not she's being threatened by law enforcement to stop being so vocal, hey, we just saw a story in real time of how that plays out in real life. So whether or not it's true, it deserves to be looked at. But as far as her testimony goes, as far as her recounting of the events of that day, what was done to her, it needs to be remembered, it needs to be preserved, and it needs to be looked into.